Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. I'm just going to wait for everyone to jump in and join me. Hopefully you can all find the link okay and jump in and be here with me as we start our sowing, growing and giving weekend. So I'm just going to wait because I want some, make sure plenty of people are here before we get going. So it's February, it's still cold outside. Welcome, welcome. Drop me a hello when you're here in the comments. I know you're here. Lovely to see you. Yeah, love hearts are always welcome as well. So here we are together. This is the start of our cut flower patch sowing weekend. So finally, like we've all been waiting to start sowing, and now is the time that we can do that. And that is because the day length, it's got to about 10 hours now of light during the day. Hi, Susie. Say hello to me. Let me know where you are in the country. Oh, hello, 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 everyone. Where you are in the country, what the weather's doing, where you are. It was like warm and nice outside, and I just went to go and get all my seed trays from outside where I was leaving them to dry, and it's now raining again. But yeah, cold and all the rest of it. But yeah, let's know where you're from. Lovely to see you all. Hello, hello, hello. So yeah, the daylight is long enough now that we can start to sow our seeds, and they will do really, really well. So what we're going to be doing over the course of this whole weekend is, this morning we're sowing, because the whole thing around the floral project, right, is we sow, grow, we give. And so this morning is sowing. This afternoon is growing, where you're going to get a tour of my greenhouse and my cut flower patch setup, so you can see how my beds work, what I do to support my plants, what's going on in the greenhouse, what it looks like, what a real woman looks like when she's really, or like what her garden looks like when she's really growing, versus an Insta gardener who might have a beautiful, gorgeous greenhouse and have everything under control. You will see what happens when you have a real woman with a real life, with a real family, growing her flowers alongside everything else that she's doing in her life. So I'll be keeping it real this afternoon, so you can see that. And then tomorrow morning we'll be getting together at the same time, where we'll be talking about giving and anything else you want to ask questions about as well. So this is a live, so you'll be able to ask me questions and things in the comments. I might not be able to answer them when my hands are actually in the compost this morning, but I will come back and check all of the questions that are in here. So you can ask me questions this way. Again, you can ask questions when we're on the tour this afternoon. And in the Q&A call tomorrow, it's on Zoom, so you can actually speak to me and I can see your faces. I miss seeing your faces, but I wanted to do it this way on Facebook Live this morning, just so that anyone and everyone across the whole of the UK could join us without having to register and do all this kind of confusing thing. So good morning, good morning, good morning. So today is all about sowing, and not just talking about sowing, but we're actually going to do it. And that's why I run these at the beginning of the year, these kind of cut flower patch sessions, is because I know that you can end up with loads and loads of seeds. And some of you have been really keen and excited and have like sown all your seeds already at the wrong time of the year in the wrong plants, and that's fine. We'll talk about that. But some of you are dead keen to get sowing, but some of you have got like packets of seeds, you don't really know what to do with them, you're not feeling so confident about, well, what do I do with these? Do I just like open the packet and sprinkle it over some compost and hope for the best? You can do that, but I would rather you were really successful with your flower growing and your seeds. And so the best way I know how to do that is to get our hands dirty together today and actually sow, right? So that you will be, you'll have your seeds sown, and once you've sown them, that's it, then nature kind of takes over and you're in the game, right? But if the seeds stay in the packets, if they just sit in the packets and you never take them out, then no fun, right? You don't get any flowers if that happens. So we are actually going to be sowing today. Now, I know some of you might not have seeds yet, and you're curious to know how to sow seeds. And so you're here just watching, and that you're very welcome as well. I want to let you know the Flower Club, our Floral Project Flower Club, is open just for this weekend for those of you who haven't got any seeds but want to get the right seeds to be sowing now. If you go to the link here where it says floralproject.co.uk, you'll see a big banner at the top of the website, and it lets you know how to get to the Flower Club. And you can go and jump into the Flower Club and you'll get your seeds in the next couple of days, and then you can just follow along with what we're doing now. You'll know what to do already. And for the rest of you, hopefully you've got seeds with you. as we're going to be sowing those, okay? So this is, I'm going to do a little bit of talking, then we're just going to get on with the sowing. So the first thing that I wanted to say was to get your seed packets, right? Get your seed packets out and ready. And what I have done is I've gone through all of my seeds that I've got from, I lost a lot of seeds over the winter because my greenhouse blew over twice. I'd got a different new type of greenhouse, a plastic greenhouse that wasn't the one I normally use, and it was destroyed twice. And so all of my seedlings from the autumn have all been destroyed. So if any of you are new and starting sowing now, I'm kind of right there with you in terms of timing. So I've got a lot of re-sowing to do. So I've got a lot of old seed packets. And then I've got all my new seeds that I want to sow as well, which is basically my February flower kit, which I'll tell you about in a moment. So I have gathered together all of my hardy annual seeds, right, that I've got, packets and packets of them. And then I've divided them because I don't want to be sowing all of these this weekend, because if I do that, I'll get totally overwhelmed and like I'll just get taken over by it, and I won't be able to set up any kind of system of being able to manage this around my life. I'll have to quit all my jobs, quit my family, and just look after the seedlings if I sow like 100 packets of seeds all in one go. So what I've done is I've divided them up because this is just the start of the sowing season. So you don't have to sow everything this weekend. So I've got some seeds that I'm sowing. These are my seeds for this weekend, and I'll tell you why I'm doing these ones. These are my seeds for next weekend. Then I'm away for a couple of weekends. So these are my seeds for the weekend after. We are sowing hardy annual seeds, okay? So you want to find any packets of seeds that say hardy annual on the back. You do not want to be sowing cosmos. You do not want to be sowing zinnias. You do not want to be sowing sunflowers. You do not want to be sowing anything that says half hardy, apart from status, which we start a little bit early, half hardy and phlox, which we start a bit early, but they're the only exceptions, right? But you don't want to be starting anything that says half hardy or tender on your packets now, because if you start those now, then they're not frost tolerant and they won't make it through to the summer. And if you do manage to make them through to the summer, you can't plant those things out until June. They're going to be massive. You're going to have to do so much high maintenance to try and keep them away from any kind of frost. Look after them. They're going to be huge, humongous, take up loads of room in the greenhouse. And quite honestly, you want to be sowing those about the middle of March, right? So you're too early for half hardy annuals. If you have been really excited, and I know some of you have sown cosmos and things like that already, I'm really sorry, but throw them out. They're not going to last. Throw them out. Bury them kindly somewhere nice in the garden with a little prayer, because they're not going to last until the summer when you need to be sowing them. The whole key with growing flowers is sowing the right seeds at the right time of the year. And it's not complicated. 3 different types of seeds we sow through the year, 3 different times of the year that we sow them. And now it's all about hardy annuals. So every seed packet you have, and don't worry if you've got Flower Club flowers, that means any flower kits you've got from August, September, October, November, December, January, February, they're all hardy annuals because that's what you need to sow in those months, okay? Now, we sow these, and I'll show you the kit and everything in a moment. So what I have done, and now I've been quite ambitious because I'm not new to this now, right? So I've got 20 packets of seeds here that I'm going to sow this weekend. If you are new to growing, I would suggest you start with like 5 or maybe 10. And this weekend, and then maybe sow some more the next weekend, more the next weekend. If you're in the Flower Club and you're new, just sow your February kit today, and then wait and sow your March kit, and wait and sow your April kit, and just sow as we go. Because what you'll find is, because we send you out 5 packets of seeds every month, the perfect ones for sowing in that month, you'll start to build your momentum slowly. And I'd rather you start small and then expand, rather than start huge and then get totally overwhelmed by it and cannot cope with the whole thing, right? And start hating your flowers. Nobody wants to hate on their flowers. So I've got a big chunk of seeds, a big load, handful of seeds here, which we're going to be sowing today. So you need some hardy annual seeds. And what I'm going to do when I start doing the sowing bit, I'm going to start with our February flower kit, but the reason I'm starting with that is because it is a really good example of the different ways we sow seeds. And many of you I know have got the February flower kit and looking forward to sowing this one. So what we're going to do next, and I'm going to go on to the rest of the kit in a moment, but what we're going to do next is we're going to take our seeds, and what I want you to do is have a look on the back of them, because I want you to divide them into 3 different piles. So some of your seeds will say these seeds need light for germination. So for example, if you've got our flower kit and you're sowing stocks today, you'll see on the back it says these seeds need light for germination. So any seeds that need light for germination, pop them all in one pile. You can be doing this while I'm carrying on talking. The next seeds that you've got are seeds that you sow and then cover with compost. So for example, if you've got our scabiosa, horrible name, beautiful flower, you'll see that it says cover with soil, cover with compost, right? So these don't need light for germination, they need a covering of compost. That's the majority of seeds. Put all of those in one pile, right? Sort those out as well. It just makes it easier when we come to sowing. And then, by the way, if you've got your February flower kit, you might just want to keep those all out to one side together so we can sow those to start with. Oh, that's where I'm going to do. I'm going to sow all of these. Hang on a minute, let me rewind. You've got on the surface of the soil, so need lights for germination, and then you've got the ones that need cover, and then you've got, there's a couple, Cynoglossum and Phlox are the only ones that come to mind, but they need dark for germination. So pop those into a separate pile as well, because it helps to sow those separately. And the reason I'm asking you to put them in separate piles is it just when we come to the sowing, if we've got a whole tray of seeds that need light for germination, it just makes it easier for us to remember not to cover those over, right? And we can just sow those and then pop them to one side. If we know that we need to pop compost over them, we sow them, we can pop compost over the whole tray. And so it just makes it easy. You don't have to do that, but it makes it easier for you to manage if you've got lots of packets of seeds. Okay, don't worry if this sounds too complicated. You're just like, okay, I'm going to ignore that bit. That's absolutely fine. It just stops you when you're sowing. If you have to keep picking up the packets and look, does this need light for germination or does this need to be covered over with compost? And you've got wet, claggy hands and they're all going all over your seed packets. For me, I just find it much easier if they're already in a pile that needs light for germination, doesn't need light for germination, needs dark, right? Then I can treat them all differently. So, but what I'm also going to do is I'm actually going to sow all of my February flower kit all kind of at the same time. So I'm going to do those one at a time, but because they contain all of those 3 different types of seeds, there'll be a really good way for me to demo how you do each of those types of seeds. And then I'm going to carry on. I'm going to do a bit more sowing. You're just going to carry on sowing whatever it is that you're sowing this morning. And once I've sowed the first few packets of seeds, I'm going to come into the question. I'm going to wash my hands and so I can put my hands on the keyboard because otherwise they're too muddy. And then I'm going to come in and look at all the questions that you might be asking me here as well. Okay, so I'll kick you off sowing. And then you carry on. We'll probably be here for about an hour this morning, maybe. Let's get you going. And then you just carry on sowing while I'm chatting away, answering questions. That's the plan. So you've got seeds, okay? Then you make sure I've got all my piles. And while you're listening as well, the other thing I want you to do with your seed packets is get them ready so you can sow with them if they're new packets. So by that, I just mean take the top off, get the packets ready. Like I've opened mine this morning and then folded them over so the seeds don't all escape, and put the date, if you know when you bought them or received them, on the back. So this is February 25. And the reason for that is when you're clearing out all your seeds next January, and looking at what seeds you've got going on, you want to know how old your seeds are, because you can sow this, like these are all fresh seeds. If you've got our seeds, they're fresh seeds. And then you can sow these again next year. The germination won't be as great. The fresher the seed, the better the germination. So, but you can save these and pull them out again next year and you know they're only a year old, right? I know that I've got seed packets in my seed tin I have no idea how old they are, and I risk basically sowing a load of seeds that won't germinate and wasting my compost and time and energy and hope. So I'd rather that your seeds had really good germination, you had the freshest seeds possible, but this is a way of making sure you know how old your seed packets are, just a little tip for you. Okay, so you've got seeds. So you can be opening those, getting them ready, putting them in piles while I'm talking. So I'm just going to talk about everything else that you need. So you need labels. You need labels, okay? So you can buy labels. I'm going to put a link up, actually. I'm going to put something in the comments. Or actually, I'll pop up here. That's a really long link, isn't it? Let me see if I can put it in the comments. Oh yeah, here we go. So you can go to this link, get that link and save it somewhere, and that will, yeah, I'll put it in the comments rather than putting it up there because it's a bit long, isn't it? I'll go back to my comments. And you can go to that link and it will tell you like where I get all my labels, where I get all my seed trays, where I get my, everything about like setting up the garden, basically. Like if you're not sure what to buy and where to buy it, I've just given you links for mine. So all on that, you can have a look at that afterwards. So you want labels. Now I've got plastic labels here. I tried growing with wooden labels. What I found was that the writing would all just disappear in the rain, and they would just all go moldy, and it wasn't very nice. So I don't like buying plastic, but I bought plastic. I use these year after year after year after year after year. I clean them off with nail polish remover each year. Great tip. Cleans them off, and you can use them again and again and again. Some of our members use cut up yogurt pots or milk cartons, right? Like if you want to recycle, I kind of wish I'd thought about doing that before I bought them, but I didn't think about it when I originally bought them, and I just kept using the same things. So plastic labels, or make plastic labels, but you want plastic labels so that we can label our plants, because you won't remember what they are. You need a pen. This is a great brand of gardening pen. You can just get that on Amazon. Or if you've got our starter kit, there's a garden pen in there as well. So just so you've got it, Artline garden marker, really good one. It doesn't wash off. If you just use a Sharpie, I find that they tend to fade and you can't read what was on there. So we've got our labels, and we'll be writing our labels as we get started as well. We'll do that in a minute together. I've got my module trays, sowing module trays. So I use these 40 cell module trays. Sometimes they're black. I love the green ones, but you don't seem to be able to get those anymore. So these are like a 2020 version. They seem to be coming black these days. Slightly less sturdy than the green ones, but they do the trick. So I use 40 cell module trays, but you don't have to use these. The reason I love these is because when we sow our 5 packets of seeds every month, there happen to be 5 rows of these. So that's great for me. So what I'm going to do today, and for the rest of my Hardy Annual over the next couple of weeks, my Hardy Annual sowing, I'll just put, so say for example, I'm sowing Scabiosa. I will sow 8 seeds of Scabiosa, and then I will sow 8 seeds of Breezer Maxima, and then I'll sow 8 seeds of Gypsophila, and 8 seeds of Stocks. Right, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to do with Cynoglossum, because I'm going to do that slightly differently. So Stocks might get 16, 16 seeds. You only get 1 flower per stock seed. They're quite unusual like that, so I do want more of those. So that's really handy for me, right? That they happen to make module trays in the perfect amount for the seeds we're sending, the seeds that we send out each month. And I know, because I've done my own Planning the Grow to Give Garden workshop, which you can find again on our website as well. I know how many plants I need for the space that I have available in my garden. So when you see the cut flower patch tour this afternoon, you'll see how much growing space I've got. I know, because I've done my planning, exactly how many plants I need for each part of my garden. So I know how many seeds to sow. I need 4 of everything in my garden. I know that doesn't sound like very much, but our flowers, they flower and flower and flower and flower and flower, and we've got so many varieties I love to be able to walk out in the garden and I'll pick this and that and this and that and this, and then those ones will be over, but these ones come into bloom. And so I've got a constantly changing cut flower patch garden. And so I only need 4 of everything, because then I cut them for a few weeks, a couple of months, and then I get bored of them, and it's really good that something else is coming up. Okay, so I know for my plan, I only need 4 of each. And so I'm going to sow 8 seeds just to make sure that I get enough plants out at the end of that. Okay, so you might want to sow, you might think, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll grow 4 as well, but it's the first time you're growing. So you might sow 16 seeds to start with to make sure you get 4 plants. What you don't want to do is open up your Scabiosa packet with 125 seeds in it and get a seed tray and just sprinkle the whole lot all over. Nobody needs 125 Scabiosa plants. Believe me, each one seed will produce probably hundreds of flowers. Okay, and each one of these seeds is going to need like 22 by 22 centimeter space in your garden. You don't need 125 plants. Okay, that's the biggest mistake newbies make. So take them out, throw them all over, and they're like, oh my God, what do I do with 125 of these? And I've got 20 other packets I've sowed as well. Right, so you need far fewer seeds than you might think, but you need more than the number of plants that you need, because you will lose. Some won't germinate, no matter what you do. Some will get slugs eat them. Some will get the birds destroy them. Some will get run over by your dog, and and some will get blown over by the wind. But this way, it means that you've got enough plants that you know you're going to get flowers, right? So you need more than the plants that you need, at least double the amount of seeds as the plants that you need. Okay. Again, go and get the Planning the Grow to Give garden if you want a detailed breakdown of like how many flowers could I get in my garden and what's a sensible amount to sow. So for today, just sow a little bit, and then you can sow more if you need to, right? So I use these module trays. I also have some of these as well. I'm not using loads of these today, but I quite like these because they sit really nicely on the windowsill. And as soon as they germinate, I can just whip those outside and leave the rest inside, right, to germinate. So these are really handy. They're called quarter size trays if you need these. But people grow in all sorts of things. There's all sorts of different module trays you can grow in between. You don't really need to grow in like big 9 centimeter pots, because what we're just doing now is we're just getting our seeds germinating. And once they've germinated, we're going to bump them up into 9 centimeter pots. Each one of these seedlings is going to need its own 9 centimeter pot to grow on in before we plant them out into the garden. Another reason you do not want 125 Scabiosa seeds sown, right? So what we'll do is we're just starting them off in here. Now, if you put 1 seed in every 9 centimeter pot, that is a lot of compost that you're using, wasting, a lot of space you're using and wasting for plants, that the seeds that may or may not germinate, and they're just going to take up so much space you won't be able to sow many seeds. So this is these are really space efficient ways of sowing in a relatively low level of compost, just to get them going, and then we'll take the ones we want and we'll bump them up, and I'll show you how to do that later on. But we have growers who are growing in yogurt pots, meat trays, vegetable trays. All you need to do is make sure different size pots. Don't worry if yours looks a little bit different to this. It's fine. As long as it holds compost, you're good. You want to make sure that it's got holes in the bottom, because you want when you water your compost, you want it to be able to drain. If it can't drain, then your seeds just rot, because all the water stays in the plastic, stays in the soil, and the seeds will rot. So if you've got a meat tray or something like that you're using, or a yogurt pot, just stick some holes in the bottom so that the water can go through. And then the last thing, then I have a little bit covered in washing up liquid this morning, so I was giving them a clean. A gravel tray like this, but you can use a plate if you haven't got a gravel tray. And what these are for, you pop your things in here, and now that can go on the windowsill, so that when I water it, it's have no holes in, so that when I water them, it doesn't go all over my windowsills, right? So, and this also makes it easier to sow into, actually, because it's a bit floppy. But if I put it in here and then sow into it, it's all a bit more solid and secure, and it's easier for me to do that. Once we move them out into the garden, you will have to get some seed trays with holes in the bottom, because again, once they're out in the garden there, you want to be able to water them and have drainage. Okay, but for now, you want ones with no, which is helpful to have, not compulsory, are, again, still covered in washing up liquid, plastic lids. So what we'll do with these plastic lids is we'll pop them over the top of our seed trays once everything's going. And what that does is it creates like a mini greenhouse inside your kitchen or wherever you're growing your seeds inside. And it creates like there's condensation in there, and it keeps it like moist and warm and damp in there for the seeds to get going. You don't need to have these. You could always use a plastic bag to tie over your seed packet if you needed to. Or don't worry about it, and they'll just take a little bit longer to germinate. But as soon as they germinate, you would take this off anyway. And then these are just really handy to have when it gets really cold. If your seedlings are out in the greenhouse and they're new babies and they're very tender still, and you're just putting them out into the garden, you can pop this lid over it and it protects them from the frost as well. And you can throw some fleece cloth over the top of them. It just gives them an extra layer of protection. So they're handy to have, but not absolutely essential if you don't have them. But if you're planning on growing like year after year, they're a good investment to make, because again, you can just keep reusing them. I know I've shown you a lot of plastic today, which I hate, but as long as you just keep using it. Use your plastic for good, people. Right, so I think we're ready to get going. Oh, and compost. Yeah, you need some compost. So I've got here, this is like a compost holder. This is called a dibber, and you don't need one of these. But again, if you're going to be growing, they're really handy to have because they help us just make little holes in the compost. Otherwise, use your finger or a pen, right? You don't have to get fancy, but if you want to get fancy, here you go. Also, last time I'll ever be wearing nail varnish, I'm guessing. You just end up with so much mud and cracked things. They're all messy anyway, but there you go. You won't often see me with nail varnish on. So the compost, I use Silver Grow by Melcor, and it is beautiful, soft, gentle, gorgeous compost. Well worth investing in good quality compost. Always peat-free, please. But this has been inside the house, and then it had some compost in it that's been outside the house. It's a mixture of kind of nice temperature compost and cold claggy compost. So hopefully my seeds won't mind that too much. So Silver Grow by Melcor is what I use. The RHS use it. It's good enough for me. So what we're going to do first is you're going to look, let's get on with it then, shall we? That's enough talking. My goodness, half an hour of talking. We're supposed to be doing sowing. So let's get our seed packets, and we still have one more job to do, which is to write your labels. So I want you to just write your labels. Don't ever write on wet labels. It doesn't work and it ruins your pens. So I just want you to write your labels for the first few sets of seeds that you're doing, which I'm going to be doing as well. So I'm first of all going to be sowing our February flower kit. And I said at the beginning of the call, if anyone wants our February flower kit and you don't have it, the flower club is open. Just go there and look for the big banner across the top of the page, and you'll be able to join the flower club only this weekend. So I'm going to be sowing our February flower kit, and what's in here is Scabiosa, Cynoglossum, Gypsophila, Stocks, and Brisa Maxima. Don't worry if you're not sowing the same seeds as me, okay? I'm going to be talking about the principles of seed sowing, and you're going to be doing it along with me, whatever seeds you've got. So get, say, your first 5 seed packets and make your labels. So you want the label. I always put the date on as well, so that I can tell when did I sow this thing. And just to reassure you, like some seeds will pop up in like 3 or 4 days. Some of them are really fast. Some of them can take up to 3 weeks. Okay, so you don't want to be getting too stressed if they take a little while to pop up. If you're in our Facebook group, all our customers are invited to our Facebook group, into our community. So if you're in there, you'll be able to see when everyone else's pop up, so you know that you're not behind when yours are taking a little bit longer. Some of the seeds take longer, some of them are very quick. Right, let me just do mine. It's really hard to talk and spell, especially if you're writing Gypsophila. at the same time. And the last one was so many packets of seeds here, docs. Right. So I've got my labels done so that I'm not trying to do that in between all the muddy hands bits, although we're just doing the first 5 at the moment together. So I'm going to get my seeds, my module tray, pop it in my gravel tray, and now, so you can see, so now we're going to start. So I just want you to be doing this alongside me. If you've got seeds, go for it. So first, we're just going to make sure that, and I'll just do this and then I'll make sure that the camera can see it. It's a bit of a funny angle, I know. So I'm putting my compost in and just smoothing it over. What you want to do is make sure there's no big lumps, bumps, stones, twigs. You get all sorts in compost. The cheaper the compost, the more crap they seem to put in it. But this is lovely, you know, and even some bags of silver grow you will open up and they'll have, some will be more woody than others. So I've smoothed all my compost over. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go like this, just to make sure that the cells are all full. Normally the corner ones you need to top up then, just to make sure they're all full. You don't want big air pockets in your seeds, in your compost. So there are a few little twigs, but nothing too major. Sometimes you get like these little balls of white in the compost as well. Don't worry about those. Right, so we've got our, you can see. Let me tell you what I'm going to start with. And if you've got, if you're sowing into something like this, when you're sowing, just make sure that you are sowing and leaving like a couple of centimeters between each seed. So if I was sowing in this tiny little thing like this, I would have no more than 10 seeds in one of these. Okay, we're never just going like that. I'll show you. We're going to be consciously sowing our seeds. So I'm going to start off with seeds that need compost to cover them. Okay, so you've looked on the back of the packet and it says, oh, this needs a covering, says either covering lightly, or it says sow it, 5 millimeters deep and then cover it over, but basically it needs covering over with compost. So in our February flower kit, that would be the gypsophila and the scabiosa, but you find whatever you've got that needs to be covered over with compost, and it will be the majority of seeds. If it doesn't say on the back of the packet, presume it needs a light covering of compost. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with my scabiosa because they're quite big and easy to handle. I'm going to make just a little hole. You can lay your seeds on the surface and then cover them over with a sprinkle of compost, right? That's the way Monty always does his. I don't know, I just like doing it this way. So I've made a little hole. Again, it's all about the conscious sowing, isn't it? And I'm going to get my seeds. I love these, they're so beautiful. And I am going to put 1 per module. See how different this is from just opening a packet of seeds and throwing them. Don't stress if you get 2 in there. We can always pull 1 out later if we need to. And you might ask, why did you put 125 packets in a seed in a seed packet, Nick, when we're only going to sow like 8 of them or 20 of them or something? And that's because they just they don't do them any smaller, right? The seed companies just don't do them any smaller. So these are a deep purple, beautiful color. Okay. So I'm going to pop the seed packet off to one side. I've folded over the packet and I'm going to keep those in my seed tin now. So you need to keep them somewhere that's dry and cool so that they stay as fresh as they can for next year, right? Or if you want to do a second sowing, or if a slug comes along and eats all of them and you need to sow them again, that's why you have 125 packets in a seeds in a seed packet. And then I'm just going to gently cover these over like this. or you can do a light sprinkling of soil over the top, compost over the top. Just make sure they're lightly covered. And then you don't have to like really press them down, just make sure they're lightly covered over. You get your label at this stage. Don't think, oh, I'll remember that later, because you won't, and just pop it in. Okay, so this is, I know this sounds really obvious, right? I know I'm showing you something that's really, really obvious, but I didn't know this when I started sowing seeds. I was like, I don't get like how you do it. Do you put them down really deep? I had no idea. So I'm showing you because I think that's the easiest way for you to know. I'm then going to do my gypsophila seeds exactly the same way because they need compost to cover them, right? So we're going to go along here. Now, I am opening my seed packets up over the compost. Highly recommend that you don't do that for obvious reasons, right? Because one little spill of the hand, and these are tiny seeds, and you're going to get random seedlings coming up and you won't know what they are. And best you can, you get one little seedling, one seed, and pop it into each of the holes. And they're almost invisible, they're so tiny. I'm just dropping one into each. And don't forget, you're going to have this video afterwards. You can come back and watch it again. If I'm going too fast for you, then you can come back and watch it again. And again, don't worry if you get a couple in because you're a bit, your fingers are a bit clumsy. I know that I've done that here, and we can pull some of them out if we need to afterwards, okay? So I'm going to take that away from the compost before I put these, try and pour these back into the seed packet. Folding over the top, popping them away. And again, I can't actually really even see these. I've actually only got one working eye at the moment due to a eye operation that did not go very well. So it's even harder for me to see them. So I know that they're somewhere in there and I'm covering them over. And I'm going to pop the label in. So then the next ones I'm going to come to are the Breeza Maxima, and we're going to sow these the same way. Now on the back of the packet it says sow them between September and November. You can sow them between September and November, but anything that's a hardy annual you can also sow now. So we're going to do these in the same way if you've got these. Otherwise, just carry on with any seed packets you've got that need sowing and covering over. And just carry on sowing. Now, normally, obviously, you wouldn't be doing this with me. You'd be doing it out in the garden somewhere. You probably wouldn't be doing it at your kitchen table either now at this time of year. But you'd be doing this out in the garden. You might have the radio on, or you might just be listening to the birds, or just quiet, silent time on your own. How lovely would that be, right? That's one of the beautiful things about growing flowers. You escape the family, escape all your other responsibilities, and just head out and you get your hands in the soil. So good for us. Right, I know they don't even look like they're seeds, do they? They look like, well, where's the seed? And that is the actual seed. Right, just getting those in the best I can. Now, all of these you can direct sow. You can direct sow these in March or April. If you can't be bothered with the faff of starting them all off as seedlings, you can direct sow them, and that's absolutely fine. You can do that. And you would do that at sort of at the end of March, beginning of April, directly into the ground. I never do that because I just don't have much luck with it. And the birds, I reckon, run off with loads of them. And I've tried it and I never have enough luck, but lots of our growers do that. I prefer, let me just get the label in while I remember. I prefer to sow like this because I'm a bit of a control freak and I like to be able to see them when they pop up, right? It's my little tray of babies now. And you know, like if you've been growing with me for a while, how exciting it is when they start to pop up, right? Really, really cool. So I want these on my kitchen windowsill so I can stare at them at least 15 times a day because I reckon that definitely helps them germinate faster. And they're getting all the love. And I tell you what, these need compost, they need light, they need warmth, they need love and water. That's it. Then you're going to get flowers. Right, I'm going to come to the next type of seeds next, just to show you, right? So we've got our stocks here, or you might have anything else that needs to be sown on the surface of the soil, like Ammi majors, for example, or something like that. Tends to be when you've got really tiny seeds, or foxgloves, another great example, snapdragons. But it will tell you on the packet if they need light for germination. And so what we're going to do with these is get my seed packet open and get some seeds in my hand. I'm literally just going to put one on the surface of the soil. And the reason we might want to do these in a tray that's separate, another reason why, was say that we remember that whole tray doesn't need covering with compost. Oh, you see I'm getting a few in each one, just to be lucky, just to be on the safe side, right? Is you might want to, because when we water these trays, chances are you'll want to water them differently. So if you've got, I'm just putting that to one side. I'm just going to make sure they've got contact with the compost by pressing them gently in and trying not to pick them off with my hands as I do so. When we water these, we're going to water them, but when we water them, you're really at risk of knocking these to the side of the module tray, and you don't want that. You want them to stay in the middle. So what we'd normally do is you can water these ones that have been covered over with compost. Again, you're still going to have to do it carefully, and I'll show you what I use to do mine. But with these ones here, you want to be really careful that you don't knock them by watering. And so what you can do is water from underneath, right? And what that means is that you take this tray and you fill this bottom tray up that I'm wiggling my pinky at, and you put it like 1/2 inch of water in the bottom of the tray. Then you put your seed tray in like this. And what you're doing is you're waiting until your compost, it looks damp but not moist, right? Or you pick it up and it feels heavy. It's really hard to explain to a newbie what I mean by that. But when you pick up a tray and it feels, you can feel when it's got enough water in it. You'll have all the water in the bottom of the tray, so it'll be a bit deceiving. But if you pick this up and you can feel it and it feels heavy, but the easiest way is to see when the surface of the compost starts looking damp, you know it's got enough, you know it's drawn water up through the bottom of the seed tray, and it's got to where your seedlings are, right? But let me just put the label in. I'm going to do another row of stocks here to fill this tray up, but I won't do that now. I'll do that after I've finished on the call with you, because I want to show you what we do next. So I'm aware I'm going really fast, so I'm going to come to questions in a moment. That is the principle. Those are the principles for how you sow all of the seeds that you have. Oh, let's go to the last type, because I haven't shown you the dark ones. I'm just going to pop that to one side for a moment. Let's come to the cynoglossum, or if you've got phlox or anything you're growing that needs to grow in dark, it needs dark for germination. So with that, I will fill this tray up. I won't fill it all the way to the top. I'm leaving at least 1 centimetre, and I'll tell you for why in a minute. Making sure that it's all nice and flat. Now I'm going to make my little holes, because on the back of the packet, it says, sow these 5 millimetres deep. So I'm making a holes roughly 5 millimetres deep. I'm not measuring, and I'm going to do so 10 seedlings in here, right? So you can see how I've made the holes nicely spaced apart, because what we don't want is when the seedlings are all grown, we don't want their roots to all get entangled with each other, because then when we move them apart and we have to bump them up, there's more risk that we damage our plants, right? The roots are so tender and when they're little seedlings, and we don't want to damage them. So we want them to be growing apart from each other, so it's easier for us to move them. So I drop my seedlings in, my seeds in. I keep saying seedlings today. Drop these in. Now, don't worry if you have to do this in a module tray. If you've only got module trays, it's fine. Do that, and I'll show you what you need to do after. And I'll show you why I'm sowing these separately, because I'm going to give these proper dark in order to germinate. So I'm going to cover them over. And then what I'm going to do with these is, and I haven't got one here, please I have. My hands are a bit muddy to pick it up at the moment, is I'm going to, once I've watered this, and I'll show you about watering in a moment, I'm going to put a book over the top of them. I'm going to balance them on a plate or on a seed tray still so that I can water them. But then I'm going to cover them over with a book or a card or a piece of cardboard, doesn't matter what you use, but something that's going to exclude the light from them, because these need dark to germinate. Okay, so but what I'm going to do is I'm going to check, probably not the first couple of days, but after that, I'm going to keep checking. I'm going to keep lifting the cover off and having a look and seeing if they've germinated, because the second one of these germinates, they need light. Okay, otherwise you'll get a like pale little green ill plant in there that hasn't got any light. So that's why we leave a bit of a gap so that you can put the book on top and it's not like right on top of the soil. But it also means that as soon as any of them start germinating, you lift off the book, right? And then what you can do is, say I have these ones on this side haven't germinated for some reason, but these ones have. I can take my compost and I can add another centimetre of soil over the ones that haven't germinated, just to keep them a little bit darker, because the book is now on top of them, now no longer on top of them. These ones can thrive away. These ones get a little bit more dark because I've got room to add a little bit more compost over the top. And then those ones will eventually germinate as well. Okay, so that's how I treat them differently if they are grow in the dark, if you like. They just need germinating in the dark, that's all, not growing in the dark. So I'll put my label in now, but what essentially I'll do is I'll put the book over and I'll just pop the label on the top. And then when they germinate, I'll pop the label in like this. So those are the principles for sowing for any of the seeds that you've got, okay? So you either put them on the top, like the stalks that I did here, or most seeds you sow them like this. The next thing you need to do is water them. And if there's any flower farmers on here, they'll be horrified at my level of mollycoddling that I do. But you can use like a spritzer, you can use an indoor watering can if you're really careful. Like when you feed baby lambs, right? Well, I don't, because I've never done it, but I've seen it on the telly, where they feed baby lambs with the little bottles, right? So I use a sports cup. I am not an Ironman, but my husband is an Ironman. And just very carefully. Now my soil is quite damp already, so I'm not really going to water these. This is already damp soil because some of it's from the bag, but some of it is sitting outside. So, or sitting under in my greenhouse. So, but if I was going to water it, I would be watering it just a little bit like this. And I would water all around the tray like this. And if you're not watering from underneath, I can just very carefully and consciously just water like all the compost where my seed is. The other thing you can do if you're sowing on the surface of seeds, if you're sowing seeds on the surface, is you can actually just water your soil before, so it's moist but not damp, before you sow your seeds, right? So these are already, my compost is already moist. I don't actually need to water this because it's already moist. So you can water your soil first and then sow into it if you want to. But the watering after you sow actually helps the seeds settle into closer contact with the soil. So ideally, you probably want to sow into dry compost, or moist normal compost, and then water because it settles the compost down around the seeds. Because mine's already a bit damp, that's why I'm doing it this way. So I have one of these handy on the windowsill, and I use that to water my seedlings. Okay, so you want to water them, and everyone says, how much do you want to water them? And it depends on in your kitchen, right? If you've got the heating on all the time, your house is going to be drier. If your house is slightly damp, then you might not have to water as much. But if you've got the heating on, it's really warm. They're in a blazing sun, south-facing windowsill, then the compost is going to dry out more often. So you have to get a sense of when your compost is just the right amount of damp. No, not damp, moist for you. Too damp and the seeds will rot. If you have seeds that don't germinate, it's usually because they've been overwatered and they've rotted. So you want it moist but not damp. And then when you say, how often should I water? When your soil is dry. Again, that's going to really vary for all of you. So I would imagine I'm watering these now. I would imagine that most of the seeds in this tray will germinate before I have to water them again. And then I'll probably water them again and take them outside to the greenhouse. So what I do now is, and just carry on sowing while I'm talking. I know that I'm not going to get to your question. I was hoping that I would have done this bit and then get to your questions live. Keep typing your questions in, because after we close out here this morning, you carry on sowing, carry on typing your questions. I'm going to be in here all weekend checking your questions and answering them, okay? So just if you're not sure and I've skipped or missed anything, ask me, because I can always talk about it again tomorrow morning as well when we're all together. The next thing we're going to do is pop our plastic lid over the top if you've got one. So you have to put your labels in at an angle, otherwise it doesn't work, right? So put my plastic lid on, and then I'm just going to pop them. Oh, I know the bottom of this is covered in compost, so I'm not even going to look. I'll pretend like it isn't, and I'll just clean it all up afterwards when you're gone. And I'll pop them on the windowsill, and I've got a nice long windowsill here. It's south facing. It gets plenty of light. Essentially, what these seeds need right now is warmth. Okay, so they need warmth, compost, and water, and that will get them going. And stare at them lots. You won't be able to help it. That definitely helps. Then what we're going to do, the next steps, and this is where a lot of newbies get it wrong. As soon as they start to germinate, you need to move them outside into your greenhouse or greenhouse equivalent. If you don't have a greenhouse, again, I'm just going to pop this link into the chat. Go to this link and look at, do I need a greenhouse? The answer is no. You don't need a greenhouse. There are alternatives that lots of our growers use, including me. And so you'll see my setup this afternoon that I have when you come to the tour. But on that link, you can also see about alternatives to greenhouses. But you cannot keep them on your windowsill. They won't grow into healthy plants. They cannot get enough light. Even if it's a conservatory, I mean, this is south facing. We get light all day here. It's not enough light. When you see your seeds starting to lean towards the window, it's because they're not getting enough light. And especially at this time of the year, there isn't a lot of light around. So you need to get the maximum light. So mine will go on the top shelf out in my plastic greenhouse. I do have a greenhouse, but it's not a proper one, if you like. They'll go on the top shelf. They'll be like there to get as much light as they possibly can so they can grow along. I bought some demo ones in today. So these have been out in the greenhouse. This is from our January flower kit. I do not want to see seedlings like this on your windowsill. They won't look like this if they're on your windowsill. They'll be leaning and moving over to one side. Now, what happened is that all of these, they didn't all germinate at the same time, right? So my guess is, because it's a bit taller, this fella and this fella popped up first, and the rest hadn't come up, but I still moved this outside. And what's happened is, so you want to move them out when they're like this size, right? When the first one or the first couple are this size, and not all your seedlings will be this big, by the way. Borage is a big, chunky plant. Sometimes they're just tiny. And you think, oh, I can't move that outside. You need to move it outside. You need to move it outside. When I say outside, I mean outside into your greenhouse or greenhouse equivalent. And then the rest will come up, but they'll just come up slower. These ones still might come up, right? I don't know. We'll wait and see. This tray is really light. It needs watering, by the way. It's pale on the top. The soil in there is dry. I need to water that before it goes back outside. But these have been outside since the first couple were this big. Okay? So I know that feels scary if you're growing seeds for the first time. They will thank you for it. They are hardy annual plants. They can handle the cold. What I tend to do when I start moving them outside is, say this tray and it's got some germinating. And what might happen is the stalks might come up, but the breezer hasn't. That's highly, highly likely. I'm still going to move the tray outside. And I'm going to move it outside, and I will move it out in the day, and I will pop this little lid over it, and I will move it out unless it's really sunny. If it's sunny, take the lids off, otherwise they frazzle, right? Big, important thing to do. So I'll take them out in the day with their lids on. I might bring them back in at night. I might do that for a couple of days. Then I'll leave them out in the day without their lid on. And then I will and just put the lid on at night if it's still cold, like it's still cold at the moment at night. So I'll do that, and then gradually, as they get a little bit bigger, I won't even put the lids on. And if it's freezing and frosty at night, I'll put some frost cloth over them, but I will just leave them to grow on. Okay, but that's really, really key, is to move them outside as soon as they germinate. Okay, the next thing we're going to do with them is called pricking out or potting on. So by that, and I'll give you a really quick description of that, but I'll show you, like, just keep watching me on Facebook, keep watching me on Instagram. If you're in our Facebook group, you'll see me doing it. In fact, on that link that I sent you, there's a little video there showing you how to prick out your plants. Okay, so, you know, there's a lot of stuff on my blog and on my socials, so make sure you're following along there. Join the flower club. Go over there and join the flower club, and then I can really hold your hand with all of this growing stuff. So what we'll be doing once they germinate is, once they've got 2 true leaves, so every plant gets seed leaves first. These are not its true leaves, okay? They're its seed leaves. Now, as soon as it gets its true leaves, which are the next ones after these, or alternatively, if they fill their pot so they're like, there's, you know, loads of roots coming out of the bottom here, I will lever out these like whole module tray. I like lever out the whole cube, and I'll pop it into a 9-centimeter pot and fill it up with compost, and it will grow on there until it's ready to be planted out into the garden. These plants will be ready to be planted out in the garden from the end of March. When the soil starts to warm, we'll be able to plant them out in the garden once they're about as big as your fist. I know it's hard to imagine, isn't it? But by the end of March, these will be about as big as my fist, and I will be able to plant them out into the garden. So that's the guideline. Is it after the end of March? And are they as big as my fist? Right? There's a rough guideline to know when to plant them out. If you have sowed them into something like this, so you'll have a little forest. If you sowed 8, you'll be fine, but like you might have a little forest if you've oversowed. And what we do there is something called pricking out, which is where we just gently hold the seedling by its leaves. Again, you wait till it's got a second set of leaves, but we'll hold it gently by a leaf, ease it out like this, and then put it on into a 9-centimeter pot. And that video of how I do that is on the link that I just put into the comments there for you to see. Goodness me. Right. So I want to keep us to time, because I'm taking a lot of your time this weekend. So somehow an hour's gone by and I've only sowed 5 packets of seeds. So I'm going to sit here merrily and carry on and do the rest of my seeds after I've left you today. And as soon as I finish that, dust off my hands. No, in fact, I'm going to dust off my hands. I'm going to go and answer your questions first. Then I'm going to come back here and sow the rest of my seeds. Then I'm going to clean the kitchen so that the rest of my family can come in here without being covered in mud. And then I'm going to see you back here for, excuse me, the garden tour this afternoon, and hopefully get to see you all for the giving talk that I'm going to do tomorrow on Zoom, and answer any questions there you might have as well. If your questions are long on the comments, I'll ask you to come along to the chat and ask me live tomorrow as well. So I'm hoping that you have sowed your seeds. I would love it if you could share a photo of them on your socials, or on, you know, message me or whatever. Like, just tag me, and my Instagram is @the.floral.project, or on Facebook, on this Facebook page that we've got here. You know, send me your photos, tag me so that I know and I can see that you've done it. And that's it now. The journey has begun. Just keep following along with me. I'll show you what to do when they germinate. I'll show you what to do next. Jump in the flower club if you're not already. And it's been so nice hanging out with you all this morning. I wish I had a whole day with you all, and we could all just put some music on and sit together quietly and sow all of our seeds. But carry on sowing until you've done what you needed to do today. Set some time if you've got further sowings you need to do. If you're in the flower club, we'll be sending your next box of seeds out on the 1st of March. So bear that in mind when you're thinking about how many seeds you're sowing. That's going to be really exciting. And yes, let the Cut Flower Patch 2025 officially begin. Right, lovelies, this will be a recording that will go live. It'll be out within half an hour or so of this finishing. So if you need to watch back on any bits again, please do. Apart from that, love you all. Thank you all for coming. So glad you're all sowing, growing, and going to give away your flowers to people who need them this year. And I'll catch you on the rest of the weekend. All right, take care. Bye-bye.